All right, I'd like to call the meeting to order and roll call. We have Councillor Toniol, who's absent on personal leave this evening. All of the members of council are present, accounted for. I'd like to also mention out the report out a closed meeting that council has just held in accordance with and as permitted with section 239.2 CDH of the Municipal Act 2001, which states that a meeting or part of a meeting may be closed to the public if the subject matter being considered is C, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board, or labor relations and employee negotiations, and H, information explicitly supplied in confidence to the municipality or local board by Canada, a province or territory or a crown agency or any of them. During the meeting, council received an update from administration concerning information explicitly supplied in confidence to the municipality relating to a proposed land acquisition matter. It asks for certainly a moment of silence at this stage here, but I also want to identify the fact that, another crisis in the world is happening, as we see in the Middle East, in particular, what's happening in Israel. So let's keep them in certainly our thoughts. And we have Canadians that are there, and some of them are have succumbed to the attack, and some of them are also, my understanding, held hostage, as our American friends as well. So keep them in our thoughts as we reach out for a moment of silence.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love, in all of us command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north, strong and free. From
Before we start our evening's proceeding, I'd like to make a land acknowledgement that we acknowledge that we are in the land and surrounded by water, originally inhabited by indigenous people who have traveled this area since time immemorial. This territory is within the lands honored by the Wampum Treaties, agreements between the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee, Lenni, Lenape, allied nations to peacefully share and care for the resources around our Great Lakes. Specifically, we would like to acknowledge the presence of Three Fires Confederacy, the Ojibwe, Ottawa, Potawatomi, Huron-Wendat, and the Caldwell First Nation. We are dedicated to honoring Indigenous history and culture while remaining committed to moving forward respectfully with all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis. Members of Council, any disclosure or pecuniary interest on the agenda as presented to you this evening? Hearing none, we'll have that duly reflected in our minutes. We have the minutes of the regular council meeting, September 26, 2023, and a recommendation that those minutes of the regular council meeting were duplicated and delivered to the members be adopted. Councillor Jobin, Councillor Houston. Any errors or omission on those minutes as presented? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed, if any? The minutes are carried. We do have a supplementary item added to the regular meeting agenda regarding Report DS 2023-20 entitled Provincial Housing Affordability Task Force Top 5 Recommendations Be Approved. Deputy Mayor Bichetti, Councillor Houston. On the motion, all in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. Move on to the consent agenda item. And we have as a procedural bylaw 2023-076, all items listed under the consent agenda we voted on through one consent motion, and that motion shall be neither debatable nor amendable. We have two items to deal with. Move by Councillor Higginson and Councillor Houston, support. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Move on, excuse me, we'll move on to delegations, and with us this evening, I don't see Jeff out there, but Josette, Eugenie, and here to talk about Sylvester Drive Sanitary Sewer Extension, Part 12, Cost Recovery Bylaw Report. I presume. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm hoping Jeff will be along shortly. Sorry about that. So thank you for the opportunity to address you this evening on the Sylvester Drive Sanitary Sewer Extension Part 12 Cost Recovery Bylaw and Final Report and the associated bylaw 2023-098 that's on the agenda tonight. As highlighted on page 4 of the report, there's no appeal mechanism under Part 12 of the Municipal Act. The work being contemplated is expected to go to construction beyond 2025. So the good news is there's no urgency in passing the associated sewer charge bylaw. We have lots of time. I have concerns about the uncertainty regarding the actual project costs and the lack of ability to engage regarding charges once they've been locked into the bylaw. I also see opportunities to pass project synergy cost savings on to the 14 businesses. I'm aware of 4 estimates of the cost that will be recovered from the landowners that have been made publicly available between 2019 and today. They range from $450,000 to $1.27 million. It's a tremendous spread. At the current pricing, 14 property owners will be paying between $37,000 and $325,000 for a sanitary connection, which does not include their costs to connect their building to the new service connection at the property line, nor the decommissioning of their existing private sanitary septic system. I would like to recommend that the next step in this process is to tender the work at the appropriate time and use the construction costs to communicate actual costs to be recovered to those landowners. The current bylaw allows 2 alternative methods to adjust the Schedule B Sylvester Drive Sanitary Sewer Extension Area Charge Basis. One is actual cost, and the second is using an index for the construction of buildings in the City of Toronto. I'm requesting that Method B be eliminated from the bylaw. The bylaw is referenced as a cost recovery bylaw. An alternative method for adjusting the sewer charge is not needed. The construction of infrastructure and municipal services are typically bundled to capitalize on the synergies for engineering and staff resources, eliminate overlap or duplicate incidental project costs, and to generally take advantage of the cost benefits from larger scale contracts. By constructing the sanitary sewers with the 2 roadwork projects, the town can reduce the onerous cost of a sanitary connection by transferring these savings directly to the 14 Tecumseh businesses. According to the October 14, 2022 Dillon Consulting estimate that was made available in the agenda package on page 240 to 242, in addition to traffic control and precondition survey costs, another $150,000 is being collected from the landowners. This includes geotechnical investigation, materials testing, and excess soil. There's another $89,000 associated with an easement that, according to page 5 of the report, may not be required. There's another $64,000 for the cost of the EA. Once these costs are locked into the bylaw, There's no ability for the public to address any concerns. In short, I'm asking Council not to pass Bylaw 2023-098 this evening and direct administration to review some of the project costs that could be borne by the road reconstruction and storm portions of the project that are being undertaken by the town or the County of Essex. I'm also asking that the timing of the bylaw be after tendering the work when the project costs are known. If, however, you are continuing to consider the current bylaw, at a minimum, I would like to remove the cost index method to grow the sanitary connection cost and insert some of the exceptions that were allowed on the North Talbot Road North Talbot Road sewer outlet area, and remove the restriction regarding no exceptions for severances. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Sylvester, I know, are you wanting to speak as well? Please, you're on the, you're on the agenda.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Your Worship. When this project started in 2019, if you divided it by the 14 affected landowners, by the time they decommissioned their existing tanks and connected, if everyone was equivalent, because we're at a minimum sewer size, there's no one landowner that causes an increase in sewer size. We're at 8 inches, it's at the minimum. Even redeveloping properties with low flows, we don't affect sewer size. In the original price that they brought forward in 2019, it would have cost about $36,000 to $40,000 per property owner of 14. And now we're in excess of $100,000 per property owner if it was divided evenly. Administration decided to disperse the costs on an area basis. So my property is going to be assessed $207,000 for a service, which is the same standard service that everyone will receive. And access storage assessment is over $300,000. So it's quite onerous to receive a sanitary sewer connection that is equivalent to everyone else's and pay 8 times what the smallest property owner is going to be assessed. So I don't believe that the assessments are done equitably. We met with administration and asked for some breakdown, or, you know, because if it was undeveloped land and it was going to be developed, then you'd maximize the use of the sewer. But these properties are completely developed, covered in buildings. I'm storing lumber in them and equipment. My employees leave the yard every day to go to the job site. So we don't really have a sewer use. The rental building has probably, we designed a septic system for 45 people because we didn't know what we would have. At the time, we asked if we could extend a sewer to Jamsill Drive, and they said they wouldn't support a sewer going through private property. We'd have had to create an easement and all this. So we spent $50,000 putting a private sanitary system in. That's state-of-the-art Waterloo biofilter, and it's designed for 45 people. And we're going to eat another $207,000 on a new connection and decommission the bed that we have. We don't think that we don't feel this is equitably done, where it's assessed on a per area basis, because our connection isn't really in any greater use than anyone else on Sylvester Drive. So we'd like this to be reassessed. I agree larger parcels should pay a little more, but based on area basis, the smallest parcel, which is the same connection I'm getting, their assessment is under $30,000. And a new bed today would cost about $40,000. So if everyone on Sylvester Drive installed new beds, we would be at half the price of what this project is. So it's very difficult to stomach what is being fed to us, especially under a Part 12 bylaw where we have no further discussion about this. There's no possibility to address this, address council, to ask for relief, and once this is done, it's done. So it's very difficult for me to accept this. So we're asking for some reassessment, some rethinking, and possibly some help from the town to pay a portion of this to lighten the burden for these businesses. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, just push the little button, thanks. All right, thank you very much. I'd like to ask Ms. Barton, could you, I mean, there's some questions that have been asked.
Thank you, Your Worship. If you could allow me, I think it might be beneficial for all of council and the viewing public to, if I was given a chance just to summarize the report in front of council, and then maybe I can go through and try to provide some clarity on some of the questions or concerns that have come forward today. So reports, PWES 2023-61, Sylvester Drive Sanitary Sewer Extension, Part 12 Cost Recovery Bylaw and Final Report. So the purpose of this report was to provide council with information on the comments and concerns received at the Public Information Center that detailed the proposed sanitary sewer extension project to service approximately 15 business park properties within the vicinity of County Road 19 and Sylvester Drive intersection. The PIC also highlighted the town's past practice for funding of major capital servicing infrastructure where there is a drive to benefit the properties, including full cost recovery against those benefiting lands. The previous report, PWES 2022-05, which was brought forward in early 2022, highlighted pertinent information to provide support for the implementation of the project and cost recovery, including broad policy basis supporting municipal sanitary sewage servicing, town studies which warranted the advancement of sanitary sewage servicing within the settlement areas, a detailed history of previous cost recovery sanitary sewage servicing projects completed by the town, from the 1970s all the way up to present times. The recommended cost recovery method being a cost recovery bylaw under Part 12 of the Municipal Act. A virtual PIC was held in early 2022. There were 33 comments and inquiries from 8 commercial properties. Additional landowner meetings with the Sylvesters were held in August of this year. Another meeting was also held with Ms. Eugenie, Councillor Houston, and Mr. Hedges to further discuss some of these concerns and questions. A summary of the concerns included within the report, as well as how they were addressed, include passing of the bylaws premature. Do the total charges include the hookup on the private side? Objections to the assessment as well as the method of assessment, and concerns with indexing costs. So the report does highlight a summary of the revisions following public comment, the main charge rationale, updated project costs. One of the properties within the service area had already been serviced, so they were removed from the calculation. And also the report identified updated project timing, as well as some synergies perhaps with the adjacent County Road 19 improvement projects that the county's looking at undertaking. I'll forego the recommendations at this point and maybe provide a little bit more insight on some of the comments and questions that were raised this evening. So surrounding cost recovery bylaw is premature. So administration does not agree that it is premature at this time. In fact, it's our opinion that it is perfect timing to pass the bylaw. The municipal class EA has been completed. The detailed design has been completed. It's typically recommended to try and have the cost recovery bylaw passed prior to the works commencing. Having the bylaw in place now prepares landowners for upcoming charges, and they have time to save. It's important to note the Municipal Act does not prescribe the timing of the bylaw, and it's left up to each municipality. But in fact, I do want to quote Section 391.2 of the Municipal Act, which states, A fee or charge imposed under subsection 1 for capital costs related to sewage or water services or activities may be imposed on persons not receiving an immediate benefit from the service or activities, but who will receive a benefit at some later point in time. So even the wording in the legislation contemplates passing of the bylaw prior to some of these benefits being received. Important to note that no charges will be levied until the works are completed and the lands would be hooked up. We've had some good conversations with Jeff and Josette, and we had restructured the bylaw to be a little bit more flexible, so it accounts for either a multi-year, multi-phase construction project with estimated costs being indexed in accordance with the construction price index. But also it could be constructed as a single-year, single-phase construction project whereby the estimated cost could be updated with the actual costs. The intent behind this is to ensure fair and equitable means for assessing costs to the landowners. Construction is tentatively planned to take place as part of a future phase of County Road 19. We had, when the project initially started, county administration had advised that no works on County Road 19 were going to take place for a good 25 years. Under new administration, they had advised some initial phasing starting in 2024-25, and then working southerly from County Road 22. So ideally, this could be possible 2026 construction date. Consolidating the projects, definitely you see construction efficiencies and less disruption for the homeowners. Cost efficiencies, right? So potentially lower cost for the sanitary sewer and the landowners when you lump it together with a larger project. The property for the widened right-of-way would be purchased by the county from the landowners, as opposed to perhaps the town purchasing an easement and then assessing those costs back to the property owners within the area. So a further cost reduction for the landowners. Being mindful that the county does have a number of high priority projects, whether it's County Road 43 or 42, Manning Road, County Road 22 interchanges, timing of a Lozon Parkway extension to match up with the MTO's recent announcement. There really isn't a definitive stance from the county that they will proceed with construction in 2026. So I think we wanted to have some flexibility, one, passing the bylaw now, and two, being able to perhaps switch gears if timing is delayed for Manning, right? So if construction is delayed a few years, I think we would be in favor of delaying construction of our project and having that integrated with the county. However, for whatever reason, if the county, again, seems to have pushed off Manning for whatever reason for a lengthier period of time, we may have to come back to council for reconsideration of the timing. One of the other comments was in respect to the annual adjustment using index, and perhaps that it is not supported. So a few comments on that question. The Municipal Act does not prescribe how a municipality may index costs. Use of the Building Construction Price Index by Statistics Canada has been used by the town before to index costs. It's recommended by Watson and Associates and is an acceptable tool when indexing costs. And it's been previously used not only for our North Talbot Road sanitary bylaw, but also the 2019 Town Development Charge Study and Bylaw. Historically, the Building Construction Price Index has been relatively low from 2013 to 2021, ranging from anywhere from 0.1% up to about 5%. In recent years, in 2022 and 2023, we've seen a dramatic increase of the index, 15.3% and 14.5%. However, it should be noted that while the index has increased 15 and 14%, the town's projects have come in over budget and comparably higher than what those index costs have been. Some of the examples would be in 2022, the Tecumseh Road Storm and Road Improvement Project, that was an increase of 21%. The Riverside Drive Multi-Use Trail came in at 63% higher. The Lesbrant Road via rail crossing came in at 105% higher, and the Scully St. Mark Storm Pumping Station had a 40% increase as well. So while we feel indexing is acceptable and the use of the BCPI is acceptable, it may have yet some time to catch up to what we're seeing as far as actual costs. So again, it comes down to the flexibility of how the bylaw was written, in terms of multi-year, multi-phase versus a single year, single phase. In regards to the estimate of costs that was made and ranging from $450,000 to $1.27 million, I would like to point out that the $450,000 from 2019, that was taken out of the environmental assessment, and that was construction only. The costs that are contained within the report and within the bylaw are total cost of engineering, construction, as well as contingencies. So not only do we got to be mindful of comparing apples to apples, we also have to be mindful as well of the significant price increases that we have seen on capital projects over the last number of years, specifically over the last couple of years too. I also wanted to provide some clarity on I guess perhaps the fairness or the open and transparency kind of comment. So I will say, although it's not prescribed in the Municipal Act, the town does hold public information centers. We do come to council with multiple reports. We do try to engage with the landowners and the businesses within the area that would be assessed and obtain their feedback. And sometimes it leads to changes or revisions or updates to the bylaw, especially in this case, with regards to trying to create some of that flexibility. In regards to the assessment basis, so administration had reviewed various assessment methods as part of this project. We looked at frontage, we looked at cost per property, we looked at cost per area, we looked at cost area plus easements. It should be noted that North Talbot Road, as part of that bylaw, we also reviewed existing use, right? So for example, looking at the water bill and seeing, the amount of sewage that was generated from that site as well. So really what we want to do is look at what's most fair and equitable to all the properties in the area. I don't think there's a right way or a wrong way. The Municipal Act leaves it up to each municipality, but there definitely is specific ways that are more fair and equitable to all. So administration did meet with Watson and Associates originally, and we had met again in August of 2023. Watson recommended assessment by area, given that it relates to the design parameters of sewage allocation and the design of the sewer infrastructure, and is most defensible by council. So, for example, the MOE design guidelines, they identify certain land uses have certain people per acre for the land use, and the only variable factor in trying to calculate sewage coming off the land would be area, right? All of the land has the same land use within the service area. It's quite an easy calculation to determine. So similar to the North Talbot sanitary bylaw, which we viewed as kind of past practice, we wanted to state, the assessment should not be about the size of the sewer, but about fairness to all properties and how the sewer is actually designed. So I've crunched two examples here just to provide council some additional information. So one of the properties on Sylvester Drive, half an acre. So if you use an assessment by area, they're paying 2.3% of the main cost while contributing 2.3% of the sewage. If you try to assess them per property or each, they then pay 7.1% of the main cost while contributing 2.3% of the sewage. So they would see an increase of almost 3 times to the cost. Alternatively, looking at one of the larger parcels in the area, so a parcel on Manning Road, close to about 3.8 acres. So if you base it on area, they would be paying 17.5% of the main cost while contributing 17.5% of the sewage. If you base it on each, it then drops to 7% of the main cost while contributing 17.5%. So their assessment would decrease 2.5 times. So the assessment method of each is not recommended, and it's not fair and equitable when you start looking at the varying sizes of the property and the sewage that's generated from each of those individual properties themselves. While we fully understand the comment about the area being built up and being fully developed, we feel that because of past practice, because of the recommendations from Watson and Associates, that an assessment based on area, and specifically in this area, because it's the only variable in the sewage calculation, that would be most fair and equitable to all, because it's not necessarily a per connection fee, but more so what percentage of the flows within that pipe are you contributing in the design stage, right? It gives that opportunity for those properties that perhaps may be underdeveloped to now look at redevelop to a more intense operation. And the last comment I wanted to make, I think it was with respect to a comment about the town perhaps paying some of these costs. So, you know, this question or concern is always raised. You know, I've had some dealings with the North Talbot, had some initial dealings with the 8th concession cost recovery bylaw, which we hope to bring forward to council next month. And you hear a lot of, you hear the different comments. You know, half the people want the service, regardless of the cost, because of failing septic systems, and then you hear the other half saying, you know what, I can't pay, or I don't want to pay, or the fact that they have just invested in infrastructure on the private side. When it comes to paying, I would advise council. I'll give you a little anecdote. So the town has a lengthy history of cost recovery bylaws for sanitary sewers, right? Started back in the 70s when the village of St. Clair Beach, town of Tecumseh, and Sandwich South were forced to put in sanitary sewers. I believe they all received grant funding from the province at that time, and they also all passed cost recovery bylaws for the sanitary sewers themselves. It's not uncommon for properties to pay for their own sanitary service. Case in point, if you look at Lakewood Park development, had about 99 units go in there. The developer puts in storm, sanitary water, roads, street lights. All those costs are then passed on to the land that's sold. So as you go in there and you purchase the property and you want to build your house, you're paying a portion, or your fair portion of the sanitary. You're paying your portion of those services that go in. And so when we do extend some of these services, whether it's an Old Castle or the Sylvester Drive, it is administration's recommendation to do a full cost recovery of those services, because it does come down to a question of fairness and how equitable it is, not only to that service area, but for the rest of the municipality itself, where the tax base or the rate base would have to pick up some of those costs, and those owners have already paid for their infrastructure in the ground or their services in the ground itself. I believe that's all I had available for any questions if you guys have. Thanks.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Phil, and to a couple of the comments that Ms. Eugenie has mentioned regarding updating the bylaw to allow actual product costs to be levied. I don't believe there's anything that we would have to specifically write in the bylaw as it's written now. But and you and I had spoken earlier on this today, it's something that we would do to update the bylaw and update the schedule should it be a single phase project down the road in, 2-3 years, right? Is that correct, or is there anything that needs to be written in the bylaw as it is today in order to update actual project costs to be levied down the road?
Through your worship, to Councillor Houston, that's correct. That it is included in the bylaw today, and just wanting to reiterate, we're not, our approach is not to increase costs or have costs inflated. Our intent is to try and install the infrastructure as fiscally responsible as possible at the best value for our landowners. And if that means, delaying or trying to incorporate that with a larger county road project and then updating the costs at a later date, that's definitely something we want to do, right? And I believe the bylaw is written that gives us the flexibility to do so.
Through you, thank you for that. And thank you to, Mr. Sylvester and Eugenie for coming out, sharing your thoughts. I see your side. I understand where you're coming from. But as we've completed in North Talbot, and we've, levied other, cost recovery bylaws, I believe the way that it's written and the way that we're assessing it is the most fairest way of doing it. We will admit there are other ways to do it, but I think the way that it's written and the way that we are doing it is the fairest to all landowners in the area. And I know it was 10 years, down the road initially when the county said they weren't going to do anything to Manning Road. I know I was at county 2 months ago, and I was there when they applied for DMAF funding to upgrade the Manning and EC Row interchange. And we know the county has moved the project up, and we don't know exactly when it will happen, but it is going to happen, and it could happen sooner or later, but I believe there is flexibility in this. And I'm hopeful that, overall costs, when the time comes for us to do it, will come down. But, we've all seen around this table how our costs have escalated. I know you're in the business and you know exactly how, costs have escalated. So I'm hopeful when this project goes through that the cost does, come down to, more reasonable, inflationary, numbers than we have seen. But, I'm prepared to move, the bylaw and the report as it is today. But, thank you for coming out and sharing your concerns.
Any further questions or certainly comment? I have 2 questions actually, but the first one was answered and talking about the county in terms of if they're pushing the project back and so forth. I know that the engineering is supposed to be completed this year for Manning Road. That portion, County Road 19 and 22. So you've answered the question that I had there. The other one, just a reference that I got from Ms. Eugenie, in particular about North Talbot project, to be treated differently. That one I didn't get because it's full cost recovery there. The only thing that comes to mind to me was we got the grant for the spine, I call it, on North Talbot to put the main trunk in. We were lucky, I know, in getting that. And then also we piggybacked the eighth concession when we had to mine under the 401. We piggybacked with the grant that the city had. But I don't know in terms of treated differently. I think everybody, I think you made that very clear that everybody's treated fairly in terms of, and you make a great example. I know any subdivision that we've built, everybody was responsible as a landowner that paid those fixed costs.
Thank you, Your Worship. Might ask Tom to assist in this. I believe the reference was made to no severances being permitted. If memory serves me right, I do believe that there is a clause in the bylaw for North Talbot that identifies if there is a severance and there is a charge that has been levied, that charge would either transfer to the new parcel as well, or if you're severing and you're in the middle of a debenture or you're in the middle of payment of that, that severing the land would require, I think, full payment of the outstanding balance. Tom, I don't know if you recall anything different, but without having the time of going into those details or the clauses of the North Talbot, but I believe that's what I recall.
Through the mayor, yes. So, yeah, with respect to change of ownership or severances, I do, per my recollection, yeah, the North Talbot bylaw stated that if there was a change, that if there was a debenture, then it would have to be paid in full prior to the change of ownership. So that was the case with North Talbot.
Okay. No, actually, this is debates between council at this stage here. Any further questions or certainly comments? I'll allow that, I'm overstepping my boundaries here, but I'll allow your comment.
Thank you, Your Worship. The exceptions that they allowed at North Talbot were for fully developed properties where they took the basic connection and left areas out of the calculation, and they paid if they were developed later. And that's the relief we would probably be seeking. We would pay for the basic connection, but my yard is entirely developed with buildings that are warehousing building materials. And if a redevelopment, like I agree with, and in our meeting with Phil, I agree with everything that he said, but the site is developed. So a redevelopment isn't going to come at my hand unless someone comes with an entire bag of money. The land is going to be used as is currently used. We need one basic service and leave the rest of it unserviced, quote unquote, and when a development comes, pay for that service at that time. That's the exception that we would be looking for. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Jeff. It does jog the memory there a little bit about North Talbot. So the North Talbot bylaw was structured in a way, and they had a few nuances for the Chicharo Club. One being that the Chicharo Club came forward and they wanted to sterilize lands at the back with respect to baseball diamonds, soccer fields. So there is absolutely no sewage allocation coming off those lands, and therefore no assessment tied to those lands for the North Talbot. The other piece from the Chicharo, I believe they owned the parcel at North Talbot and Old Castle intersection. And the exception for that parcel was it was a vacant piece of land. And they weren't quite sure if they wanted to buy into the North Talbot system at that time. So there was a clause in that bylaw that said if you wish to buy into the North Talbot at a future date, if there's capacity, then you may choose to do so. The way that we have approached this is we had expanded the North Talbot service area to incorporate more lands along Rossi, more lands along Walker Road, maximize the capacity within the North Talbot. And that parcel that Chicharo owns at Old Castle and North Talbot Road is actually now assessed into the 8th concession service area and bylaw. So when that bylaw does get passed, those charges associated within that bylaw would then be assessed to those lands when serviced. So really, it was more of a let's wait and see game with an undeveloped piece of property that straddled the North Talbot service area and the 8th concession service area. And over time, the municipality has come forward with updates to the bylaw and updates to the service area that has now forced their hand saying there is no capacity in the North Talbot. You now must go in the 8th concession. Hope that provides some clarity.
Yeah, maybe I just misunderstood in terms of how the calculation was made, but I do understand, the Chicharo scenario and so forth, and I think as well, it's a cost plus piece. Okay, any further questions or comments? Go ahead.
Thank you, Worship. Through you to Phil, for allowing a certain exemption like that here, as Mr. Sylvester has mentioned, the town would end up holding those costs for those undeveloped
That's right.
lands, right, into perpetuity, right, until they would develop, right? So then we would, if a property developed down the road, we would then collect on that property the cost plus the holding costs of that piece. Is that essentially, what would happen there?
Through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Houston. So land that is sterilized and does not have a sewage allocation assigned to it is outside of the calculation. So whatever those costs are then get divvied up to the smaller pie, let's say. With the 8th concession coming forward, there are areas of land that are sterilized, right? There's MTO parcels near their interchanges that we know will never be serviced. There are pieces of the cemetery that will be sterilized because we know there will never be sewage coming from that, other than the banquet hall or the receiving area. To sterilize a piece of property like this in the midst of an industrial area or a business commercial area would not be recommended.
Further questions? It is on. What would you like?
No, your mic was off.
Okay, it's on. Any further questions or comments? At this stage here, we do have, as well, in the recommendation, I think the PWES 2361 Sylvester Drive Sanitary Sewer Extension Part 12, Cost Recovery Bylaw, final report, and there is a recommendation that report PWES 2023-61 title Sylvester Drive Sanitary Sewer Extension Part 12 Recovery Bylaw final report be received, and that the cost of the sanitary sewer system for the Sylvester Drive sanitary sewer outlet area be assessed against the benefiting lands within that area based on the extension, main and lateral charges in accordance with Part 12 of the Municipal Act. And further, that consideration be given to the first, second, third, and final readings of bylaw 23098, a bylaw for the Sylvester Drive sanitary sewer outlet main and lateral charges that outlines charges to the benefiting lands for the construction of sanitary sewers within the Sylvester Drive sanitary sewer outlet area. Prepared? Move by Councillor Houston. Do I support? Councillor Higginson. Any further questions? Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. And just to clarify, next steps now, after, should we make it first, second, third reading? Next steps, because we've got a couple affected landowners here, what are those? And potential any timelines?
Through you, Your Worship, next steps would be to continue to coordinate with the county on their detailed design and their phasing of Manning Road, incorporate and try to align our 5-year capital works plan to match up with theirs, and ensure that detailed design drawings and specification and tender documents are included as one single project moving forward. And if anything were to happen with respect to timing or with respect to the county project, we definitely would report back to council at that time.
Further questions? On the motion, all in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Motion carries. Okay, we have communications for information, A and B. If I get a motion receive, Deputy Mayor McKetty and Councillor Dorner. On the communications, all in favor? Opposed? That is completed. Any of those two pieces of communications, anything you want to pull out? I just have one question on A to Mr. Bartnick. On the EA, the City of Windsor, I know we have to have, I guess they have a notice period till October 29th or 30th of this year. And they're looking for comments, obviously, as partners in Little River. I'm sure LaSalle, with Lou Romano. We will have comments presented to them.
We will review the study or perhaps have our consultant, who is also assisting us with the Little River Pollution Control Plant, EA, review the study and provide comments, and if need be, come back to council for their endorsement prior to submitting to the city.
So that we're looking at October 24th. Okay. On the motion, all in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. Okay, action updates from county council and boards. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, just an update or to give a shout out to the Tecumseh Parks Recreation Service, who's partnered with the library board on the senior book club. So that there's 3 sessions that are being offered at the Tecumseh branch, and the dates are on social media. So that's a good news in terms of the partnerships that is being developed there, especially with the renovations going on. And at the county, aside from the solid waste debacle right now, the local municipalities, 4 out of the 7 voted no to go do regional collection. So we're back to square one where, we're going to have to see where this takes us. But
Yeah, I just want to add to that piece as well, is that the county bylaw is still in force and will continue to be in force. Obviously the triple majority didn't succeed and so forth, but I would surmise that as the days wear on and contracts start to be renegotiated, there might be a change of mind. And so the bylaw will still be intact at the county to revisit the situation. And I want to thank Councillor Houston for stepping in for me at the county while I was away out of country. Committee minutes, we have the Police Services Board, June 26 and October 2nd. If I could have a motion to adopt the recommendation. Moved by Councillor Jobin and Councillor Houston. Support on the motion. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. We'll move on to reports. This is, again, an add-on for this evening, but I want to certainly thank our Development Services Director and our CAO for preparing this in short notice. And there's a recommendation here, and I'll ask our Director, Mr. Hillman, to bring that report forward and with a recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening. Just briefly, I'll go over the report. Everyone, I think, will be familiar with the report that came out from the province just prior to the election called the Report of the Ontario Housing Affordability Task Force. This came out in February of 22. And really what it was intended to do was to identify a need for 1.5 million homes by 2031 in Ontario. And it came forward with 74 recommendations. And the task force report, they spanned a number of recommendations. Some affect larger municipalities and some affect smaller, but they certainly were looking to make significant changes in how housing is built and approved in the Ontario context. At that time, there was a very brief window of opportunity for comments to go back into the ministry. So the mayor did issue a letter dated February 14th that is attached as attachment number 1 to this report. And it made basic observations of the 74 recommendations based on the experiences here in the town. And that was certainly received by the ministry, but we hadn't heard anything further on that document. We went into an election, and then subsequently there have been a number of legislative changes that we've seen coming out of the province. Some of them are deriving their the genesis is from this task force report. But most recently, the Minister of Municipal Affairs wrote to the mayor on September 15th and to all heads of council in Ontario, and basically asked for the heads of council to indicate to the minister their preferred top five recommendations of 74. So that's quite a challenge, actually. And that the request said you could advise of the recommendations that were preferable, or some that were preferable and maybe warranted some changes. So with that in mind, and a deadline put in place by the minister to have those comments in by October 16th, myself and the CAO met with the mayor and strove to prepare some comments for certainly council's endorsement, and that's the basis of this report tonight. So what we really did in doing this was, after looking at the 74 recommendations, which span all number of types of considerations, we took into account the mayor's letter of February 14th attached to the report, a letter that has come out from the president of AMO on October 3rd, which is attachment 2 to this report. Our recent experiences here at the town and development issues that we've had over the last number of years took into account some of the findings through the housing action plan that council adopted just a few months ago, and through our discussions are recommending to council consideration of the following top 5 recommendations. Now, I'm speaking to these completely out of context from 74 other recommendations, so I understand they're probably going to be all over the map, but these did seem to have some relevancy to the situation here in Tecumseh, and are intended to really move the bar in terms of trying to move forward with helping to resolve this housing crisis that we are currently facing in Canada. So the first one is with respect to recommendation 3A, and we did provide a link to the task force report in this document. And what the task force was recommending was that there be a limit on exclusionary zoning in municipalities through binding provincial action, so that it would allow as of right residential housing up to 4 units and up to 4 stories on a single residential lot. We recommend that that be modified to read limit exclusionary zoning in municipalities through binding provincial action to allow as of right residential housing comprising singles, semis, duplexes, and townhouse dwellings up to 2 stories on a single residential lot, and that would much more appropriately fit with the context of Tecumseh. The second recommendation is with respect to the task force recommendation number 13. Limit municipalities from requesting or hosting additional public meetings beyond those that are required under the Planning Act, and we're recommending that that be supported. Some of the experiences that we face, and we have seen it elsewhere, and you will read about it, is that the approval process has a tendency to spiral into a protracted period of engagement. Total acknowledgement, engagement is very important, but I think there needs to be a way to acknowledge what the issues are, report back to council, and have council making decisions in a timely manner. And that would go a long way towards speeding up the approval process, which is one of the issues that is delaying housing and affordable housing. The third is with respect to Task Force Recommendation 26. A little bit of legalese around this one, but what the task force recommends is require appellants to promptly seek permission or leave to appeal of the tribunal, the OLT, and demonstrate that an appeal has merit, relying on evidence and expert reports. What that's saying is basically before an appeal goes forward that there's a determination based on evidence, not just conjecture, but on expert statements and evidence that an appeal has merit. That sounds reasonable. What we're asking be added to that is that remove de novo Ontario Land Tribunal hearings, which I'll explain, and return to a process where an adjudicator reviews material that was placed before council in making its decision and determine merits of an appeal on that basis. A de novo Land Tribunal is a case where there's an appeal on a matter, could be a rezoning, and when it goes to the OLT, it's as if council hadn't gone through a process. It's as if none of the issues had been discussed. Anyone can bring up any issue at the hearing, and it creates a very cumbersome circumstance where all the issues are deemed to have been resolved in front of council, and there could be new issues being brought up in front of the OLT. The province had moved away from that for a period of time, and then they went back to de novo hearings. And we really feel that a way of improving that appeal process would be to just focus on the issues at hand through the expert documents that were in front of council and have an adjudicator make a determination based on those. The fourth top five is with respect to Task Force Recommendation number 42. And the Task Force recommended that provincial and federal loan guarantees for purpose-built rental, affordable rental, and affordable ownership projects be provided. Strongly support this. And we've heard from developers that we're familiar with in our area that would be a powerful tool to move affordable housing projects forward. And lastly, the fifth is with respect to Task Force Recommendation 45, which states improve funding for colleges, trade schools, apprentices, and encourage and incentivize municipalities, unions, and employers to provide more on-job training. That was very much around the trades. And we suggest support and recommend that the following be added for both skilled trades positions and building official positions. One of the challenges in terms of moving housing forward is to have sufficient building officials that are trained and accessible and available to municipalities. That currently is not the case, so a significant shortfall. In addition, we are recommending that consideration be to supporting those five that were stated, and that council also endorse the positions expressed in the AMO letter. So ultimately, Mr. Mayor, the recommendation is for council to receive this report, DS 2023-20, and that the letter from the president of AMO, dated October 3rd, as attached to the report, be endorsed, and that it be forwarded to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs, and further that the town's top five recommendations as contained in this report be endorsed and forwarded to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs by October 16th at the request of the ministry. So, Mr. Mayor, happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hillman. Any questions or comments? Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Higginson.
Thank you very much, and through you. Is that better? Thank you. And through you, thank you very much for this report, and thank you for linking in the Ontario report as well. It allowed me to kind of look back and forth between the two, because yes, there is some things out of context, but in context when you look at it. My question is on our number one and the task force recommendations 3A. The inclusion, the modification that we're recommending is from as of right 4 units and up to 4 stories on a single residential lot. We're asking it to be modified to include that and single semi-detached duplex. Can you draw that out a little more, and I'm wondering if, because there isn't anything in the report talking about density percentage or anything like that, that they're not forcing municipalities to get to a certain density before exclusionary zoning is taken out. So can you draw that out in the Tecumseh context a little bit and why we're making that modification?
Good question through you, Mr. Mayor. So to be clear, if I heard you, we are not suggesting to support up to 4 stories, okay? The recommendation is very much, the fundamental recommendation is that exclusionary zoning is very characteristic across Ontario. It's been the basis of zoning since the 1960s, which is primarily lands are zoned for single unit, single homes. And the recommendation is not as extensive in terms of built form that the task force was suggesting, which was basically allow up to 4 units and up to 4 stories in height on any property. What we're suggesting is, I just want to speak to that for a moment. What that is messaging, though, is that there is a dire need for intensification in the Ontario context. I think this is a significant change. It will not happen overnight, but what it's trying to illustrate is that the rezoning process is a very cumbersome process, and it is becoming an accepted norm that different types of housing relative in scale can be compatible with one another. And we have really good examples here in our community of singles, semis, and townhomes on streets together. Families are living in them. They result in very vibrant neighborhoods with diverse housing choices that don't have to go through repeated cumbersome rezoning processes. That's not attached to density. The statement is basically saying that's something the municipality could deal with. There are all sorts of regulations that the municipality would still put in place in terms of size, scale, setbacks. But that the notion of use be available as of right to homeowners, builders, to create a diverse housing stock without a cumbersome process, and that would still result in good community planning. To be clear, though, it's only up to 2 stories and single semis and townhomes.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that, and I appreciate that it's the modification allows both for the intent of densification and of more affordable homes, basically, but also allows some land use planning on behalf of the municipality to still take a forefront in how not only we build more homes, more affordable homes, more attainable homes, but also to recognize the built forms that we currently have and still maintain some level of control at the council level for that. So I appreciate that modification, and thanks for the explanation.
All right, thank you. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Honor. Question, Mr. Hillman, in terms of the Housing Affordability Task Force, they talk about going back when it started with Minister Clark in February. There was a letter our mayor wrote, the top 5 recommendations. Don't we have AMO that sees all this in terms of recommendations, but to have, say, 400 top 5 recommendations, how are they going to filter? What's the purposeful activity? I just see myself in this region, Windsor, Essex. We have 7 mayors, and I'm not sure if you're privy to what they're submitting, but are we close to what their top 5 is? And if we're all different, how is the minister or the task force going to sift through all this and come back with a report? I'm just trying to understand the process.
I'm going to answer that because of my experience as a former president of AMO. We have 7 different caucuses that are there representing large urban, small urban, rural, single tier, region, and they basically, the task force itself that AMO had initiated has a representative from every one of those caucuses that are in there. So they're bringing a perspective of a small community, rural community, and up to the big cities and so forth. And then I guess you could use it, homogenize all of the findings that are there, and then they bring perspective recommendations to the board, and then the board, it's 43-member board. And then those, accepted, changed, and so forth. But usually the task force is well represented with the various size of communities, as well as where they're from. Northern Ontario, Eastern Ontario, Central Ontario, Southwestern Ontario. So they have great representation within the whole province. So you get a pretty good flavor. So in the report that Mr. Hillman is reporting on, the one from the letter from AMO, is from the president, was basically brought forward by the task force, brought forward to the board. Those are the recommendations. And normally, what's going to happen, I would surmise by within the next month or two, the MOU table, which I served for quite a few years, will be brought to the minister and say, this is what Ontario's municipalities are saying. So it does carry a lot of weight, you know, in that regard. So when we looked at the recommendations that they were actually asking, it does serve our purpose, you know, as our community as well. But that's basically how they would do it, is all of those caucuses coming together. And they represent Northern Ontario. There's two of them out in the north. LUMCO, as they call, Large Urban Municipal Area. OSM, Ontario Small Urban Municipal. ROMA, Rural Ontario Municipal Associations. They all have their chairs on there, so.
Well, that's good to hear, because again, when I looked at it and just reading it, I don't get that background, but having that makes sense, and hopefully, like I say, through the recommendations, through the AMO, that there'll be fruitful, information for the ministry.
And I just want to add too, is that they do associate with AMCTO as well as CAMA, another organization, MFOA as well. Get everybody's 2 cents worth.
And Mr. Mayor, if I could, thank you, and that was helpful because I didn't have an answer for your question. Some of these programs that come out from the province, we're not part of their development, but we know the importance that they play. And just to add to the mayor's comments, we have been in consultation with the ministry, and it's possible that municipalities that do provide the minister with their top 5, there may be funding that's tied to that. It's not clear yet. The funding programs are being created right now, and they're evolving. So I think it's, as much as it's important to endorse the AMO recommendations, which we fully encourage council to do, it is important that council take a position, and we're hopeful that these top 5 will make its way to the minister.
Any further questions or comments? Then a recommendations to move the report or adopt the report. Councillor Houston and Councillor Higginson support on the motion. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. Move on to financial services, FS 2023-09 budget variance report for June 2023. Mr. Kitsos.
Good evening, Mayor and members of Council. This is report FS 2023-09 budget variance report for June 2023. Administration's recommendation is that this report, showing a projected year-end general tax-supported operating deficit of $376,000 and a projected year-end rate-supported operating deficit of $346,000, be received. Administration conducted our 2023 Q2 budget variance exercise. So that includes a review of year-to-date transactions as at June 30th, 2023, and coming up with projections for the balance of the year. So that exercise resulted in a general tax-supported deficit, as I had mentioned, of $376,000 and rate-supported deficit of $346,000. So some primary drivers for the general tax-supported deficit. So that would affect all municipal services with the exclusion of water and wastewater. Include significant reduction in revenues. So that includes user fees, permits, and charges. So we're projecting a deficit of over $800,000. That's primarily due to delay of some major developments. So that's resulting in a decrease in building permit revenue of close to $700,000. We're also seeing a continued decrease in revenue from provincial offenses. Collections, we're projecting $70,000 below budget. We also, a big item included is net transfers to and from reserves. So I'll try not to get too deep into this, but generally we will We use money from reserves in the operating budget, and that's a source of revenue, and we'll also transfer money to reserves, and that's considered an expense to the operating budget. So the budget included a net revenue of roughly $500,000. So we're projecting a deficit of 1.7 million. So that sounds huge and bad, but it's not necessarily the case. The primary reason for that big difference is that we transfer surplus investment income to reserves. So it's kind of a good story there that we do have significant investment income that we're projecting this year. However, we don't use that towards the operating budget. So we essentially transfer any surplus to reserves. So we don't want those types of differences skewing our operational results. Some primary drivers with respect to expenditures. So we're looking at salary and benefits, looking at a surplus of close to $580,000, and that's stemming from multiple temporary staffing vacancies. So that's been the story the last couple of years. We're also looking at, we're feeling some of the effects of inflation with respect to operating maintenance supplies costs. So we're looking at close to $200,000 deficit corporate-wide. That's due to increased costs for street lighting repairs. We've got some vehicle maintenance and building maintenance costs that are all projecting above budget. So the general tax supported deficit of $376,000 excludes the effect of investment income. And so we do that because we exclude that from reporting, and that's because the investment income can be volatile and unpredictable in nature, and we don't want it to skew our operational results. Nonetheless, investment income is projected to generate a surplus in excess of $2 million, and that's benefiting from higher interest rates and higher bank balances, and the higher bank balances are due primarily to delays in capital program spending. So we will catch up at some point, but as of this point, we're benefiting from that. As per town practice, as I had mentioned, investment income surplus is transferred to town reserves. Those reserves can be used to offset the projected general tax-supported year-end deficit. With respect to the operating budget variance for rate-supported services, and that's for water and wastewater services, we are projecting a year-end deficit of close to $350,000. There's 4 primary drivers there. First, the greatest contributor is the sanitary treatment costs. So this is a service that's provided by the City of Windsor. Primarily at the Little River Pollution Control Plant, we are projecting a deficit to that line item in our budget of close to $440,000. That's due to a significant rate increase charged by the city, so which greatly exceeded the rate increase that we had included in our budget. This projected deficit will be partly offset by a lower than budgeted uptake in the town's sanitary backwater valve and foundation drain disconnection subsidy program. So we're looking at a surplus there of, or unspent allocation of $70,000. On the water services side, purchases cost, so we purchase our bulk water from the City of Windsor. We're projecting a year-end deficit of close to $65,000. That again is due to the difference in the rate, the actual rate increase passed by the city, which is based on consumer price index and what we had included in our budget. So we had forecasted a lower CPI than what actually came to effect. That is offset in the water division by projected surplus with respect to wages and benefits of close to $70,000, and that again is from temporary vacancies in the water division. So those are the primary drivers. As always, a thorough listing of all operating variances is included within the report as attachment 2. With respect to the town's capital expenditure budget, a list of all capital projects that have actively incurred costs to date in 2023 is included in attachments 3 through 9. And those detail approved budgets, costs incurred since project start, and projected year-end cost and variance. In total, the list includes 110 projects with total budget of $110 million. Just to reiterate, a lot of these projects will span multiple years, so we don't generally spend that kind of money in a year. Attachments 3 through 9 also include detail for projects that have been undertaken as part of a department contingency project budget. So These lists are included at the bottom of the schedules for those departments that have a contingency project budget. And just to remind council that contingency projects are projects that come up during the year that were not planned or budgeted for. The contingency budget allows for departments to address unforeseen needs of relatively small dollar amounts in an efficient time manner. Attachment 10 includes a detailed listing of procurement activity for the town for 2023 year-to-date, including project name, successful proponent, and awarded amount. So if there are any questions, I'd be happy to take those now.
When you mentioned about the surpluses going into the reserve fund and that, is it in a rate stabilization fund?
Yes. Well, the first avenue for any surplus is the tax rate stabilization reserve. So if we are able to achieve our target balance, then any excess above that amount generally goes to the infrastructure reserve. So just to remind council, the infrastructure reserve is a very important reserve for the town. It's the only reserve that we have really for new assets, and it only has one source of revenue, and that is the new infrastructure levy, which is like right around $2 million per year, which is a good amount of money that goes in there, but it's, when you consider the cost of new infrastructure, it's not a great amount. So, any excess that we do get, we like to put into that reserve.
Okay. I guess my question with, especially on the tax supported and the other, about 700,000, we're into October, between now and December, obviously, you kind of see what the picture is. Then what are we doing to try to reduce some of that between now and December 31st?
So that's a good question. So, what I can say that is a lot of a significant portion of the deficit really is due to the slowdown in the economy. So there's not a great deal that we can do in that regard. We have our programs in place. There's plans in place. So, the town has lands that are ready to develop. There have been some cases where instances have occurred that have slowed the progress, and that has slowed the revenue, so that will come. And with regard to with respect to expenditures, that's always an option to try and trim or keep an eye on expenditures. I can say that the administration generally is very cognitive of that opportunity. So we do have a very cost-conscious team here. So every effort would be made to contain costs.
And if I may, through the mayor to council, add to that, Mr. Kitsos did outline the gapping and the vacancies that are contributing towards offsetting the deficit by about $500,000. So we have taken some measures to try to mitigate. Some of these, as Mr. Kitsos has alluded to, are kind of hard to control. We can't control the effects of the economy on the development industry that's chosen not to proceed and has resulted in a significant shortfall in revenues associated with buildings. The POA court revenues, Mr. Auger is taking measures to look at alternate forms of to levy tickets and go direct with respect to enforcement measures so that we can avoid the costly overhead associated with the POA courts. So measures are being taken and in progress to try to stem some of that impact.
No, my point is that, when you come out with your report and that, I get it, council gets it, do the residents get it? So that's where I'm coming from. I want to make sure that they understand in terms of, you know, the economy and everything else. And we know that housing starts have gone down, interest rates are high, and so forth. The good news is that you invested very well our money, and I think $2 million plus in interest. That is additional revenue. So it's not all doom and gloom. There's some good news in between. But I think the important thing is how you know, the residents understand, you know, the whole budgeting process and how it works and so forth. Any questions or comments at this stage here? Then a motion to receive the report from our treasurer, Deputy Mayor Bichetti, Councillor Houston. All in favor? Opposed, if any of that is carried. Thank you. Public Works Engineering Services, Sylvester Drive, we dealt with that. PWS 2365, Ministry of the Environment, Conservation Parks, Consolidated Linear Infrastructure, Environmental Compliance Approval. Long time coming. Mr. Bartnick.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening, Council, again. So the recommendation contained in this report is that the report be received. The purpose of the report is to inform Council of recent changes to the regulatory environmental permissions framework, guiding the approval process for sanitary and stormwater infrastructure. The MECP has adopted what is known as the Consolidated Linear Infrastructure Environmental Compliance Approval, or what us engineers like to refer as the CLI ECA. It's a hit at parties, I promise. This new approach replaces the pipe-by-pipe approvals for municipal sewage works and instead captures past, present, and future approvals into a system-wide ECA document. This new process maintains municipal responsibility for the town's storm and sanitary system and introduces a widened scope of review, approval, and operational requirements for sewage works. So in a nutshell, it's a download of the responsibility of the municipality for review and approvals, and a more vigorous structured operation and maintenance and inspection and reporting framework for the sanitary and stormwater works. A summary of the impacts to the town. So we will have to develop an intake process to meet review approval requirements of the CLI ECA. Respond to audit requests from the MECP to demonstrate that we are in compliance. We'll have to update town design standards to be in line with the new MECP sanitary and stormwater design criteria. We'll have to develop operational plans and manuals to fulfill operational conditions. We'll have to implement internal procedures to carry out ongoing and routine inspections, maintenance and monitoring, and we'll have to prepare and submit annual performance reports to Council as well as to the MECP. So the next steps moving forward will be to continue developing an implementation plan and identify roles and responsibilities within the department. Designate the Director of PWES as the town's representative for the purpose of signing and submitting necessary CLI ECA applications for sanitary and storm to the MECP. Develop and recommend a CLI ECA related fee structure to recover costs associated with fulfilling requirements for developer application scenarios. So ideally, this would be included as part of the fees and charges bylaw. And we'll continue to review additional resource requirements during this transition period. If there's any questions from Council, I'd be happy to answer them now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bartnick. Any questions or comments? Then a motion, I believe that we're looking to receive the report. Moved by Councillor Higginson, Councillor Jobin. All in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. And again, Mr. Bartnick, PWES 2023-70, L'Esperance Road, County Road 22 to the Westlake Road Traffic Operations Review. Timely also.
Yes. Thank you, Your Worship. If I could ask Christina perhaps to go to page 3 of the report, it does have an aerial view of the L'Esperance 22 intersection. Thank you, Christina. So the recommendations within this report is for the report to be received by council. So over the last year or so, and perhaps even longer, the town has received multiple complaints regarding traffic operations of the L'Esperance Road 22 intersection, specifically surrounding the queue lengths and delays for northbound traffic. So the town recently retained R.C. Spencer Associates to conduct an operational review and traffic analysis on L'Esperance Road from County Road 22 to Westlake Drive to evaluate the existing conditions and identify any improvements that may be required. It is important to remind council that there was a municipal Class EA that was completed by the County of Essex and the MTO in 2009 for improvements not only to County Road 22 corridor, but their County Road 19 corridor as well. And the recommended design within that EA for 22 and L'Esperance intersection was a partial interchange. Westbound traffic from L'Esperance to County Road 22. Eastbound traffic from County Road 22 would exit onto the Sylvester Drive flyoff, with is just easterly of this location that's on the projector. It's also important to remember that County Road 22 and L'Esperance intersection is controlled by the county, and the timing of these improvements is unknown to date, primarily due to the costs not only of this interchange but other interchanges and other major capital improvements on the county transportation network. So a summary and conclusions of the operational review and traffic analysis. So it was found that the existing northbound and right turn queue lengths at County Road 22 extended past Westlake Drive. The current northbound peak hour traffic volume at L'Esperance 22 warrants the installation of a right turn lane. So it is recommended a right turn lane be constructed the full length of L'Esperance from County Road 22 to Westlake. This will also reduce the queue lengths of the northbound traffic as well. The right turn lane can be installed within the existing right-of-way, provided that the east sidewalk is removed. Re-implementation of the east sidewalk would require significant efforts and costs, such as land acquisition, relocation of hydro, relocation of utilities, loss of parking within the private development as well. Due to only 7 pedestrians using the sidewalk over the peak 8-hour period, which was considered low use, along with the planned construction of the multi-use trail on the west side of L'Esperance to commence in 2024, it was R.C. Spencer's opinion that the town could forego the re-implementation of the east sidewalk. Again, council is reminded that these proposed works are kind of an interim solution until such time that the L'Esperance County Road 22 partial interchange is constructed. And lastly, existing traffic volumes at L'Esperance and Westlake do not warrant an all-way stop control. I know we have received a number of questions or inquiries on a full-way stop. The traffic volumes do not warrant that. So next steps moving forward. Current traffic analysis can be used as a benchmark against associated traffic impacts resulting from future development. So as developments come forward in MRSPA, as they come forward in the Tecumseh Hamlet area, they can use this information that the town has retained here as part of this report. Administration will include these recommended works for a right turn lane as part of future PWES capital works plans. And lastly, financial implications. The estimated costs to install a right-hand turn lane is approximately $400,000, which includes engineering, construction, and contingency. That's the end of my presentation. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you, Mr. Burtnick, for the report. I know this was a long time coming, but it was evident that we needed to do something, and we have to get the ball rolling. And I know the county might have a proportion of those costs of the 400,000, or is that solely the town?
Through you, Your Worship, it's something we can raise with the county. I'm not expecting that the county would come to the table, although they are the owners and the operators of that specific intersection itself. I think any, left turn or right turn improvements on the Les Bronce Road system itself, which would be a town-owned road, would be town costs itself.
Very good. And, in reading the report, very technical traffic, a lot of engineering involved. But at the end of the day, if we can get this information and put it in a budget or in a work plan so that it will come to fruition, because the next 5 years, that area there, and we know Banwell, and we know County Road 42 and Manning, it's a box. And the residents, unless we give them some east-west corridor reliefs, we have to think for the future in terms of when we do these projects, the timing of them, correct? So, if we can help with the West Lake extension and get that going and along Manning Road, and the report we saw tonight all plays a part in this. And that's why we have to line them all up and get the planning done. And this is the first step. And I want to thank you for presenting it tonight. And hopefully, like I say, we can put some solutions to it, because the traffic there is awful. I know during peak hours, let alone for that. But I also worry about emergency services trying to get through there. We also have the CP tracks. When we talk about Banwell Road reconstruction, we have to work with the city, but we also have the county. So there's a lot of coordination. So I just encourage everyone to keep the dialogue going with all levels of different governments. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Worship. Through you to Phil. I'll echo the Deputy Mayor's comments. I get, requests all the time regarding the traffic on Les Bronce, regarding the intersection. I'm not surprised by any of the data that is in the report, because we all know how stressed that intersection is. But it's great to have the data. We talked about it today. It's great to know that, we've got eyes on this intersection, and we know improvements are needed. Today is as good as it's going to get, right? And it's only, there's only going to be more traffic than today. And I try to tell residents, enjoy it as it is today, unfortunately, because with County Road 42 under construction today, Banwell and 42, shut down. And I think that the traffic wasn't too bad. But I think it was last Friday night, I was coming home at 5:30 and it was backed up almost to Gwen. And I wondered, where is this traffic coming from? But it was long weekend. And I think, everyone was probably coming down 42 and they knew that Banwell, was closed. But there are times where I am surprised at the amount of traffic that I see, on that road. And I just try to tell everyone, today's as good as it is, or as good as it's going to get, because it's only going to get worse with, us building more and the 9 years or 10 years of anticipated 42 construction. So everyone just needs to be patient, right? And I try to tell everyone, practice patience over panic, and we will be okay. So I appreciate the information and look forward to the pathway, next year, so that it'll open up the door for us to make improvements. But, to the Deputy Mayor and the Mayor, please be advocates for us at County Council, because we certainly need some partners there for us to finish these improvements that we need. So thank you.
I just want to add, we got an hotel coming there too, off West Lake. Within a year to 18 months. So, so we've got to do something. The only concern, I know he said only 7 pedestrians, I'm not one to really be very confident crossing EC Road Expressway, as a pedestrian and so forth, but that could create some issues as well, because you've got a sidewalk that'll end up to nowhere. and you've got on both ends. And so, and I understand the relocation of the services are critical. The only other thing that I can see as well is that the buying of more property and bypassing some of the services on making the turns. But I'm a little concerned that that sidewalk's going to be missing. Okay, move to receipt. Deputy Mayor McKetty, Councillor Houston, all in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. I believe we're into bylaws now, Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council has before it this evening 3 bylaws for its consideration for first and second reading. Bylaw 2023-098, Sylvester Drive Sanitary Sewer Extension, Part 12, Cost Recovery. Bylaw 2023-104, Amending Agreement, Ontario Provincial Police Contract. And Bylaw 2023-105, Lease Agreement, Ontario Provincial Police Building. And if it's also Council's wish this evening that those same reference bylaws also receive consideration for third and final reading and passage this evening.
All right, thank you, Mr. Clerk. And 2 readings on the bylaws. Councillor Houston, Councillor Jobin. Any questions or comments? Hearing none. All in favor? Opposed, if any? And 3 readings in order. Councillor Higginson, Councillor Dorner. All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Any unfinished business? Don't see any. New business? Go ahead, Councillor Jobin.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I wanted to touch on Councillor Houston's comments about road construction. Friendly reminder to viewers and anybody in the audience, welcome this evening. Banwell and 42 is closed. Closure signs are for real. Take note, closure signs are for real. Road detour signs are for real. I find it just quite disconcerting that everyone wants to challenge those, and then they're just making it an unsafe situation for everybody, even for the workers on the projects and everything. And I just tell everyone, same thing you were saying, give yourself, if you reside in that area, you're going to need 15, 20 minutes extra to get out. And if you don't, and you're in a detour, give yourself 15, 20 minutes. We have to get through this safely and efficiently and be courteous, and things can maybe move along a little more productively. So, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, motions. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just to give a premise to my motion, a few weeks ago, the mayor and I were at the County of Essex ceremony led by the Essex Kent Scottish Regiment, and I was really deeply moved by the speakers in terms of their stories that they talked about the liberation of Dieppe, and talking to the Deputy Mayor of LaSalle, Mike Atapaka. He's an Afghanistan war veteran, along with having Councillor Dorner, who's also a veteran. I thought, it would be nice if we can recognize the importance of the Afghanistan war on our cenotaph. And so I don't know how or what we can do, but in terms of me presenting the motion, hopefully we can get a report somehow we can recognize that war and the soldiers that fought. So my resolution this evening for Council's consideration is, whereas to acknowledge the importance of the addition of an inscription at the Town Hall cenotaph in the town of Tecumseh to recognize the services and sacrifice of the Canadian Armed Forces in the Afghanistan War, and whereas to stress the importance of thanking the veterans who have served for their country and acknowledging their contribution to world peace, specifically the services and sacrifices of the Canadian Armed Forces in the Afghanistan War, now therefore be it hereby resolved that Council give favorable consideration to the addition of an inscription on the Town of Tecumseh cenotaph at Town Hall, 917 L'Esperance Road, that recognizes the services and sacrifice of the Canadian Armed Forces in the Afghanistan War. The inscription on the cenotaph will read as follows: Afghanistan 2001-2014, and that final consideration and approval of said inscription be subject to the cost of adding the inscription to the Town of Tecumseh cenotaph to be determined during the 2024 budget deliberations, and I so move.
Thank you. Support? Councilor Dorner? Friendly amendment that I would like to add is that the monument is owned by the Canadian Legion. I think we should have a conversation with the Legion just to get their blessing.
For
I don't
sure.
think, I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, for sure. I know, I talked to Mr. Tapaka about that, and he says that the town owns the cenotaph, but obviously there's history there. and
They
we don't
paid for
want
it.
to. Yes, so we want to make sure we show that respect
Yeah.
and go through the proper process. So there's no timeline in terms of administration coming back, but, you know, if we can look into that, that'd be appreciated.
Yeah, so I think in the.
As amended.
Yeah, okay, as amended. All right. On the motion, all in favor, as amended, opposed, that's carried unanimous. Okay, confirmatory bylaw, 3 readings to confirm the proceedings of this evening's meetings. Councilor Higginson, Councilor Dorner, all in favor, opposed, that's carried. Any notices of motion? None. Next meeting is Tuesday, October 24th, 2023, 7 PM start. And if there's no further questions or comments, then adjournment's in order. Councilor Houston and Councilor Dorner, all in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. Thank you. This meeting is now adjourned.